Josh, good morning to you. Always a pleasure to have you on the show. A lot to discuss, as you can imagine, bright and early this Monday morning.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
So, Josh, I'd first like to discuss the latest with the ceasefire talks and proposals that are underway. Within the past week, we did see that U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken was out in the Middle East to discuss these ceasefire talks. And it seems like since then, some leeway has happened. I'd love to first get your opinion on those talks happening in Egypt, as I know many in the Jewish community feel like Egypt should be stepping up to do more for the Israeli community during this tense time.
I would say even more so, Egypt should have been stepping up all along to help the people of Gaza and any other war situation, any other conflict around the world. Neighboring countries do what they can to bring refugees off the front lines and into their countries for help. Egypt has done essentially nothing for the people of Gaza. They've left them there in squalor. So unfortunately, I think you would have to take this latest Egyptian proposal with a grain of salt. Yes, they put it out there. Yes, you have Israeli negotiators right now in Qatar. The head of the Mossad is there, along with the Egyptians and the Qataris. As you said, Israel and Hamas, neither of them have responded to that two-day ceasefire offer. But let's remember, Hamas has rejected every single offer on the table until now. Things could be different now that Hamas leader Sinwar has been taken out, is now dead and gone. Things could be a little bit different, but that being said, again, Hamas has rejected every offer, and we'll have to see how it plays out. We'll have to see what the two sides say.
A great point you're raising there, Josh. And I guess I want to ask you, because of that, can you even trust a ceasefire negotiation or deal that is reached that does involve Hamas, considering they are a terroristic organization? They can always agree to do one thing, and then once the papers are signed, once the hands are shaken, they can do the entire opposite.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I mean, we had a ceasefire with Hamas until October the 6th, and Hamas broke that on October the 7th and massacred 1,200 Israelis, raped, pillaged, murdered, beheaded babies, and did all the horrible things that they did. So no, Hamas cannot be trusted, and that's why they're not even part of the talks directly right now. It's between Egypt, Qatar, and the Israelis right now. Hamas, again, rejecting every single offer. So listen, Hamas wants the war to end. Israel has dealt them a serious blow, has taken out many of their key leaders, has taken out many of their operatives, many of their terrorists in Gaza. They want the war to end. And Israel has made it clear all along that until our hostages are returned to us, until Hamas is no longer in governance in Gaza, no longer has the ability to attack the state of Israel, the war will continue. Those are our three aims. Those are our three goals. And nothing short of that is possible if you're coming from our perspective here in Israel.
Josh, at the beginning, you mentioned that Egypt should have been doing more for the people of Gaza, and I'm sure many share that same sentiment with you this Monday morning. I want to ask you, though, if we look past the ceasefire, let's say the ceasefire happens, what's next? Because we know the people in Gaza, those innocent Palestinian people that have nothing to do with Hamas, they're facing that humanitarian crisis when food was actually brought in by IDF. We know that Hamas took that food and pretty much ate it in the tunnels. What's next for those people who are dealing with the aftermath in everyday life?
Yeah, so I think we're a long way off until we get to that point right now. Hamas, as you said, they have essentially stolen every ounce of aid that has gone into Gaza. They have made millions and millions, hundreds of millions of dollars off that aid. So I think the first step is we have to get Hamas out of there. And then afterwards, we can talk about the day after, what's going to happen, who's going to control Gaza. I definitely see a continued Israeli military presence for a very long time as a result of the security situation right now. You have pockets of Hamas popping their heads back up in different parts of Gaza. I was just reading a few minutes ago, not only in northern Gaza, also in central Gaza and in southern Gaza, the IDF troops are forced to act in all those areas as a result of the Hamas aggression on all those fronts. So we're a long way off in terms of talking about the day after. First, Hamas must be eliminated, and then we definitely have to figure out what's going to happen there.
I know for many people this morning, it's kind of hard to wrap their heads around a ceasefire because even though that might happen with Hamas, Israel is still being hit from all sides. When you look at the conflict with Hezbollah, also Iran, the Houthi rebels, how can you even consider a ceasefire when you know that Iran is backing all of these other terroristic organizations that could help funnel Hamas if you think about the other side of the conflict?
Yeah, that's a great point. We have to remember that Iran is the head of the octopus here. Israel is fighting a war on 7 fronts. These are all proxies of the Iranian regime. So they are the key to this whole situation. It's because of Iran that Hamas was able to do what they did on October the 7th. It's because of Iran that Hezbollah is armed the way they are and attacking Israel on an hourly basis. I'm getting the alerts on my phone just several minutes ago. More rockets fired in northern Israel. The Houthis, Iraq, different militant groups in Iraq and in Syria also attacking Israel. So it's a 7 front war. It all goes back to Iran. Iran has now attacked Israel twice with ballistic missiles, with drones. Israel responded over the weekend, taking out key defense mechanisms in the Iranian air defense systems, along with the ballistic missile program, rather. And Israel, this might be the first step in terms of what Israel has to do. The next step is going after the nuclear program of Iran. Iran cannot go nuclear. If they are a threat not only to Israel, but the entire Western world, including the United States.
I want to ask you, are you all thinking any other key players are playing a role? And I ask that because a lot of eyes are on the conflict with Russia and Ukraine as well. And they're seeing how North Korea is playing a role in that fight. Are you all concerned about any other people stepping in to aid Iran with this fight?
Well, we know Iran has a good relationship with Russia, a good relationship with China. So they're definitely part of that axis that is, doing what they can to destabilize the area, to bolster Iran. And of course, on the other side, you have the United States. And the United States, the greatest friend, the greatest ally that Israel has, no doubt about it. But the United States right now is going to elections, and we'll have to see how those elections play out and see what happens, see who the next president, see what the policies are going to become once there is a new president come, not only after the election in November, but once somebody is inaugurated there in January. So we'll have to see how it all plays out on all sides. And I think a lot is hedging on who wins that election. I know that this is the Middle East here, and Donald Trump certainly is respected. Even if he's not liked, he's definitely respected throughout the Middle East because of his hard stance. That's what is necessary in this region. This is a region where power dictates what's happened, where weakness is frowned upon, where weakness is trampled upon. So if he is going to win the election, things can go one way. If Vice President Harris wins the election, things might go the other way. So we'll all have to wait and see what happens over there. The United States, of course, the dominant superpower in the world today. So it's a major important election taking place next week in the United States.
Yeah, I'm so glad you mentioned that, Josh, because unfortunately, the conflict in the Middle East has been switched to become highly politicized here in the U.S. of what one side would do rather than the other. We've seen the questions asked during the debate. And for many Americans, how the conflict in the Middle East has been handled is top of mind this election season. So I'm glad you brought that up. You mentioned the respect factor. If I look back in recent months when Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu came to the U.S., not only did he visit the Biden administration, he had a special visit with former President Donald Trump, which adds to your statement of the respect that Israeli officials have with the former president. And former President Trump has been very clear. He says if he was the commander in chief, none of this would have happened because of the respect that the Western world has with him. Could you provide that perspective, please, as it relates to the aid that Netanyahu says is still needed to come out on top in this conflict?
Yeah, see, what we can base that on is what President Trump accomplished during his first term in office. So many different things were positive, which he accomplished, moving the American embassy rather, from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, recognizing the Golan Heights as being a part of Israel, recognizing the communities of Judea and Samaria as not being per se illegal. So all of those accomplishments we can attribute to the president's first term, and maybe more than anything, the Abraham Accords between Israel and the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, and other nations, Morocco, other nations in the Middle East. And Israel is definitely, I would say, on the verge of a normalization agreement with the Saudis. Saudi Arabia is also waiting to see what happens with the U.S. election. And they're another nation that respects strength and power. That's why they weren't willing at this point to come to any type of normalization agreement. They're waiting till after the election. So again, things could go one way. The Saudis respect President Trump. I don't know what their stance is on Vice President Harris. I think it remains to be seen if she in fact wins the election. But the Saudis definitely are waiting, and that has been key to making peace in the Middle East. The Prime Minister Netanyahu has envisioned a blessing, as he called it, during his latest address at the United Nations, if the Saudis and the Israelis are able to come to an agreement.
Josh, if you don't mind, a lot of viewers have questions this morning about that alleged terrorist attack that happened yesterday near Tel Aviv, Israel, where we pretty much saw over 30 people were wounded. We're told at least one person died. Has that been confirmed as a terrorist attack? What are you all hearing on your end?
So over the last several minutes, I have seen that has not been confirmed as a terrorist attack. All indications point out that it was an attack, a deliberate attack. It was an Arab, an Israeli Arab, a citizen of the state of Israel from the center of the country with his truck who rammed into about 30 civilians there, many of them elderly who were on a trip to start their week. Sunday's a day of work here in Israel. So you have soldiers returning to base, people going back to work. So a very, very busy intersection in the center of the country. It has not been 100% at this point confirmed, but eyewitnesses say that the driver sped up deliberately and rammed into these people. Those are eyewitness accounts, and we're still waiting for the police and the security forces to 100% confirm what happened yesterday morning. Unfortunately, as you mentioned, one person was killed, 6 people seriously wounded, people being trapped under a massive truck, people getting off a bus at a bus stop, and only to be rammed down by this alleged terrorist. At this point, we'll have to see if that's confirmed later on today.
Josh Hasten, always a pleasure to have you join us here on Live Now from Fox. Thank you so much for this dialogue and your candidness as we discuss conflicts in the Middle East. I hope you have a safe rest of your day.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I want to give you all a